You feel a sense of security every time you open your banking app and see that $100,000 balance because the system has conditioned you to believe that a large pile of cash is the ultimate safety net. You've been a disciplined saver, skipping the vacations and driving the older car just to build this nest egg. But as you stare at those numbers in the dark, you are starting to realize that your money isn't just sitting there, it's dying. The math is fundamentally broken because while you are earning a pathetic 0.01% in interest, the central banks are printing trillions of dollars out of thin air, effectively melting the value of your hard-earned life force. Welcome to the $100,000 savings trap, where the more you save, the more you actually lose to a system that views your caution as a profit center. The bank is not a vault for your wealth. It is a factory that uses your deposits as raw material to create massive profits for its shareholders while giving you back the crumbs. When you deposit that $100,000, the bank uses fractional reserve lending to create nearly $1 million in new loans, charging 8% interest to your neighbors while giving you almost nothing in return. You are essentially providing the fuel for a machine that makes everyone rich except for you, the person who actually did the work to earn the capital. In 2026, the savings account is a legalized heist where your time is being harvested in broad daylight, and you are being thanked with a monthly statement that confirms your slow-motion bankruptcy. Think about the invisible heist of inflation, because this is where the elite destroy the middle class without ever having to raise a single tax. If inflation is at 15% and your bank is paying you near zero, you are losing $15,000 of purchasing power every single year just for the privilege of being safe. In 1990, $100,000 was a fortune that could buy a literal estate. But in 2026, it barely covers the down payment on a modest home or a few years of high-end survival. The numbers on your screen are staying the same, but the reality behind those numbers is evaporating like water in a desert, leaving you with a pile of digital paper that buys less and less every time you go to the store. The bail-in clauses hidden in the fine print of your banking agreement are the ultimate insurance policy for the financial elite, ensuring that if the system fails, they can legally take your deposits to fund their own survival. Most people think their money is protected by government insurance, but in a systemic collapse, those funds are a drop in the ocean compared to the trillions in outstanding debt. You are an unsecured creditor to a multi-billion-dollar institution that is making high-risk bets with your life's work every single day. If the music stops, you won't be the one being bailed out. You will be the one providing the liquidity for the architects who built the burning building. It is time to stop confusing bank balance with wealth and start understanding that cash in a bank is a liability that the system can revoke at any moment. The concept of a liquid emergency fund is the primary psychological leash used to keep the middle class from ever acquiring real power because it encourages you to keep your hardest earned capital in the most vulnerable asset class on the planet, which is the fiat dollar. They tell you to keep 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account, but they never mention that the yield is a mathematical illusion that doesn't even cover the cost of the groceries you will need by the end of the year. You are essentially hoarding water in a bucket with a giant hole at the bottom and calling it a reserve, while the elites are trading their paper for fertile land and physical gold and private equity. In 2026, the math of safety has been flipped on its head, because the safest place for your money is actually the most dangerous place for your wealth. You are trading your future sovereignty for a false sense of security provided by the very institutions that are actively devaluing your labor through the printing press. You must confront the brutal irony that while the bank is paying you 0.01% on your savings, they are charging you 24% interest on the credit card debt they issued using your own deposits as collateral. You are essentially funding your own exploitation and providing the ammunition for the banks to keep you and your neighbors trapped in a cycle of high interest debt. The system views your $100,000 balance as raw material for their high-velocity lending machine where they turn every one of your dollars into $10 of new debt that they control. You are the silent engine of the global banking profit model while you struggle to keep up with the rising cost of living in an economy that is designed to punish the saver and reward the debtor. It is time to stop being the unpaid fuel for the institutional machine and start being the owner of the infrastructure that creates real value. Digital surveillance is the hidden cost of the modern savings account, where every transaction and every balance update is a data point that the technocratic elite use to track your compliance and your lifestyle. Your $100,000 is not a private asset. It is a digital permission slip that can be restricted, frozen, or adjusted based on the changing rules of a centralized authority. In 2026, the banking system has become the primary enforcer of social control, where your access to your own wealth is granted by an algorithm that has no face and no soul. The elite are building private vaults and decentralized networks for their own capital, while they encourage the masses to live in a transparent digital cloud that they control completely. True wealth is found in assets that do not require a login or a third-party intermediary to exist, but the Matrix has spent decades convincing you that a bank balance is equivalent to freedom. The opportunity cost of holding $100,000 in cash is the largest invisible heist in the human experience because it prevents the magic of compound interest from ever working in your favor. If you took that same capital and placed it into productive assets that provide cash flow and inflation protection, you could be looking at millions of dollars of net worth over a 30-year period. But the system wants you focused on the safety of the liquid balance because it ensures you remain a predictable and stable participant in the labor market. They want your capital immobile and easy to tax so they can fund their own ventures and their own bailouts at your direct expense. You are playing the game of accumulation in a currency that is designed to melt, while the masters are playing the game of asset ownership in a world that is running out of real resources. Think about the psychological heist of the high-yield savings account, because this is where the banks use a marketing label to hide a massive mathematical loss. They give you a 4% return, and you feel like a genius until you realize that the real rate of inflation is closer to 15%, effectively resulting in an 11% annual tax on your life's work. They want you focused on the tiny interest payment so that you never stop to calculate the massive erosion of your purchasing power that is happening every single second you wait. You are being hit by a silent heist that doesn't require a gun or a mask, but just a few keystrokes at the Federal Reserve to ensure that your savings never quite buy what they used to. In 2026, $1 million is the new $250,000, and if you are still saving paper, you are essentially volunteering to be fleeced by a system that has zero loyalty to you. The Federal Reserve and the central banking elite understand that a debt-free population is a population that cannot be managed, and that is why they have engineered an economy where saving cash is a losing strategy. By keeping interest rates below the real rate of inflation, they are effectively redistributing wealth from the prudent savers to the reckless borrowers and the institutional asset owners. You are being penalized for your discipline and your caution, while the people who use massive amounts of leverage to buy up the world are being rewarded with devalued debt and rising asset prices. This is the structural slavery of the 21st century, where the more you work and the more you save, the further behind you fall compared to the people who own the printing presses. The math is broken because it was written by the people who own the capital to ensure that the people who provide the labor never accumulate enough power to challenge the status quo. The tax on interest income is the final insult to the modern saver because the government demands a cut of the tiny profit you made on an account that is already losing value to inflation. You are essentially being taxed on a mathematical loss, ensuring that your path to financial independence is blocked by a series of bureaucratic toll booths designed to keep you on the treadmill. In the United States and the United Kingdom, the tax code is a masterpiece of social engineering that protects the wealth of the elite while placing the entire burden of running the state on the shoulders of the working class. You are working from January until May just to fund a government that is systematically destroying the value of the currency you receive in return. It is time to wake up and realize that the only way to win a rigged game is to stop playing by their rules and start building your own exit strategy through the ownership of hard physical assets. Purchasing power is the only metric that matters in the world of money, but the system has successfully diverted your attention to the vanity metric of the nominal balance. You see $100,000 on your screen and you feel rich, but when you walk into a car dealership or a grocery store, you realize that those dollars are hollow and weak. The elite understand that money is just a tool to capture resources and time, and they are busy capturing all the real resources while they trade you their depreciating paper for your limited hours of life. You are trading the sunshine of your youth for the shadow of a promise that the architects have no intention of honoring once the system reaches its inevitable conclusion. Sovereignty begins with the realization that the dollar is no longer money. It is a debt contract that is being printed into digital oblivion every single day. Fractional reserve banking is the magic trick that allows the institutions to create wealth for themselves out of thin air while your hard work is diluted into insignificance. Every time a bank issues a new loan, they are effectively reaching into your bank account and stealing a portion of your purchasing power to fund someone else's consumption. You are the silent creditor to a multi-trillion-dollar gambling house that views you as a data point on a balance sheet rather than a human being with dreams and goals. In 2026, the banking system is more fragile than ever, yet they have convinced the masses that the bank safe is the most secure place for their future. If the music stops, you will be the one left holding the empty bag, while the architects escape to their private islands and their physical vaults filled with real assets. The shift from physical ownership to digital permissions has turned your savings account into a high-end subscription to your own life, where your access to capital is granted by a centralized server. Your $100,000 is a collection of ones and zeros that can be erased or restricted at the whim of a legislature that is desperate for revenue to fund its own failures. True wealth is silent, and it exists in the physical world where it cannot be deleted by a line of code or a systemic reboot. The elite are building private data centers and physical fortresses for their wealth while they encourage you to live in a fragile digital cloud that they control completely. Sovereignty begins with local storage and assets that do not require the system's permission to exist, while the matrix wants you entirely dependent on their digital permissions. The psychological toll of being a paper saver is a silent epidemic that leads to chronic anxiety and a feeling of being trapped despite having a high bank balance. You have the money, but you are afraid to spend it because you know how hard it was to earn, and you can feel its value slipping through your fingers every single day. This constant state of financial survival mode keeps your brain in a perpetual fight or flight response, making it impossible for you to think long-term or plan for a real exit from the matrix. The elite understand that a stressed and exhausted population is a population that is easy to manage because they are too tired to question the math of their own exploitation. You must break the cycle of the savings trap and start moving your capital into things that provide peace of mind and real-world stability. Technological unemployment and the rise of artificial intelligence mean that the skills you use to earn your $100,000 are becoming obsolete faster than you can save. If you are not using your current income to acquire the means of production or the assets that other people will need in the future, you're essentially waiting for the moment the algorithm decides you are no longer a profitable line item. The window to escape the traditional workforce is closing faster than most people realize, and the individuals who rely solely on a depreciating cash pile are the most vulnerable in the upcoming economic reset. The future economy will not reward those who save paper, it will reward those who own the systems that perform the work. The banking industry uses your savings as the foundation for their own high-risk investments, ensuring that they capture all the upside while you take all the systemic risk. You are an unsecured creditor to a global casino, where the dealers are the central bankers and the house always wins at your expense. If a bank fails, your deposits are the first things they will look at to fill the hole in their balance sheet through a legalized process known as a bail-in. You have been sold a lie of protection, while in reality, you are the primary target of the wealth extraction funnel. True security is not found in a government guarantee, but in the ownership of tangible things that have intrinsic value regardless of what happens to the digital banking system. The exit strategy from the savings trap requires a fundamental shift in your perspective, where you prioritize the velocity of your capital and the quality of your assets over the size of your bank balance. It means moving your wealth out of the digital matrix and into hard physical things that cannot be printed or devalued by a central authority. It means being the person who owns their land, their gold, and their tools, while everyone else is paying a monthly tax for the privilege of existing in a corporate simulation. Once you break the cycle of the savings scam, you will find that your net worth begins to grow in real terms for the first time in your life. My name is John, and I have spent my life deconstructing these blueprints because I am tired of seeing the most disciplined and hardworking people in society destroyed by a system of mathematical lies. The savings account is one of the most effective cages ever built because it looks like a fortress from the outside while it functions like a shredder from the inside. It is time to wake up and stop serving the interests of the elite through your high-interest labor and your depreciating savings. The math is broken, but your future can be reclaimed the moment you decide to stop playing their game and start building a life that is actually based on the truth. Subscribe to this channel and join me as we continue to tear down the illusions of the modern economy and build a blueprint for a life that you actually own. We are at the end of an old financial era, and the only people who will thrive are those who understand the wires behind the curtain and the reality of ownership. My name is John, and the heist ends the moment you decide to wake up and take back your wealth one lesson at a time. It is time to take back your time, your energy, and your future, because nobody is going to give you your sovereignty for free. Let's get to work on your actual wealth today. The bail-in clauses hidden in the fine print of your banking agreement are the ultimate insurance policy for the financial elite, ensuring that if the system fails, they can legally take your deposits to fund their own survival. Most people think their money is protected by government insurance, but in a systemic collapse, those funds are a drop in the ocean compared to the trillions in outstanding debt. You are an unsecured creditor to a multi-billion-dollar institution that is making high-risk bets with your life's work every single day. If the music stops, you won't be the one being bailed out. You will be the one providing the liquidity for the architects who built the burning building. It is time to stop confusing bank balance with wealth and start understanding that cash in a bank is a liability that the system can revoke at any moment.